They might be self-aware.
Happy New Year! I think that's what we say. Happy New Year.
We did
it. Yeah. There's that New York song they sing as they drop the ball.
New York, New York.
New York. Yeah.
Yep.
If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even in the world of AI.
Maybe we should try and get one of those AI image generators to, like, it's the ball dropping in New York, but it's just the open AI symbol. And it hits the ground. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe. But we're back.
Keeps those balls. So they've got to go somewhere. They're not just going to throw that out, right?
Honestly,
somebody's got like a junkyard full of them.
It's not something I've spent a lot of time thinking about. Where do they store the New Year's ball? Maybe I should. Maybe there's some insights there.
It's a different one every year, isn't it?
I'll ask Perplexity later on. Oh, it's a different one? They customize it for the year?
Well, we have different glasses every year, and they somehow keep trying to make them into like little circles. You know, it worked great from 2000 through 2009, and they've been really just trying very hard ever since.
Well, it's a new year. The clock has ticked over. There's now a 5 at the end of it. It's pretty special.
That's true.
And we are here with the first episode of the year of They Might Be Self-Aware, where we are going to predict. We're going to give you our top 3 predictions. It's a round robin, so technically you're getting 6, maybe That's even right. 9, because we aren't really great at counting. But predictions of what we think is going to happen in the year of 2025 in the context of AI. We're going to lay it all out right now.
Yep.
Place your bets. What's the betting market that people like, where you can go and bet on what's going to happen? It was big in the election.
OnlyFans, I think.
No, it's not OnlyFans. I don't know. Whatever it is. All right, who's going first this time? Who's on first?
Neither of us. I'm going to say, let's have ChatGPT go first.
Right.
We talked about OpenAI being one of the winners of 2024. Yeah. Why don't we let that winner give one of its own predictions?
Winner. Show us what you got.
Yeah. I'm going to read one of ChatGPT's answers for what it looks forward to most in 2025 in the AI space. It says, advanced generative AI in creative industries. In 2025, generative AI will have evolved significantly to produce high-quality content across multiple creative domains, including art, music, video, and literature. These AI systems will not just assist in creative processes, but will be capable of creating entirely new forms of entertainment, blending genres, and producing immersive, personalized experiences. I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there.
Okay.
I know that literature is... You know, in 2024, the distant past of 2024, we got up to the point where up to a whole page plus of like cohesive text could kind of work. To say that it's going to produce high quality content for literature, I think is kind of astonishing. For video and maybe music and art, absolutely believe it, because I've seen already really, to me, a layperson, very impressive AI quote unquote art, depending on who you talk to, absolutely not art or definitely is. Music, Suno, you know, I've used them in the past. There are a few other competitors out there. They've made gigantic inroads. In late 2024, they had a new V4 that came out. I assume there will be at least a new one, 2025. Video, gigantic improvements in video in 24. Absolutely, that's going to keep going in 25. I don't know about literature. I don't know if anyone's going to buy an entire, not just buy. I don't think we're going to see a Pulitzer Prize won about an AI-generated novel, let alone entirely new forms of entertainment.
In that realm, that in 2025, AI goes mainstream in media. And by that, I mean that most of the media that the average person is consuming will have been touched by AI. It won't be hey, did they use AI? Right now we ask the question, was AI used as part of creating this new ad campaign for Coke? I'm suspicious. It'll just become the default. Of course, there was some AI used, whether they were using it for previs or getting some notes on the script or working on alternative versions or automatically dubbing everything or rendering out complex visuals or making the music or making the sound effects or making the voices. It'll just become, of course they leveraged AI. In general, in the mainstream media that you are consuming. Not that the traditional media world will disappear and there will be no more artists and hand craftsmen, et cetera.
No, they're absolutely just more of the process at that point.
it becomes part of the process in 2025.
I could see that.
What was your number 3?
My number 3 is kind of a riff on that same theme,
Okay.
but perhaps a little bit more on the depressing side of it, which is to say, in 2024, we saw that there was, the occasional story of like a whole team of editors were fired because they thought ChatGPT could do a good enough job. Oh, we saw that, this sort of thing happened because we're firing this many people, or we're not hiring that many people. I think that's going to become more and more of a theme in 2025, where we're going to see this company explicitly states, because of generative AI, we aren't going to hire as many programmers, or we are going to fire this many designers, or we're going to this or this or this. And like, not just hide behind the fact that, oh, it's the market, and we just aren't. They'll specifically say, these tools got good enough. We don't need as many people for this anymore. And I don't think that's a positive thing. I think that it is short-sighted. I say this almost accusatorily, hey, you hypothetical company, you're being short-sighted. I do think it is, though, because if you don't hire junior programmers, then you can't make mids or seniors or fellows up at a certain point, because you need the years of experience to get good enough to interact. Even if the models continue to get better and better and better and better, you still need somebody who, at least for now, who like actually understands enough of the real problems that are going on that can interact and help guide these systems. Even if AI is integrated into every creative work, programming and so on included, I do think that it will always be important to have a person involved in the process. And so even though it is my prediction that we're going to see a lot of non-hirings and firings because of AI, that is ultimately going to be very short-sighted, and maybe 1, maybe 5, maybe 10 years down the line, there'll be a huge clawback of, oops, we should have not done that. That's one of my predictions.
It's a little depressing, dude.
Well, it's not all sunshine and nice, cozy, warm GPUs whirring at 100% capacity, keeping you warm through the winter.
My number 3, so we've talked before about 3% as a number. And 3% being the percentage of the population that, we'll say in last year, 2024, was actively, consciously engaging with generative AI as part of their more or less daily lifestyle. The easiest example of this is I'm bringing up ChatGPT to ask it a question, to help me draft a document, etc. Many more examples.
3% was in like industrialized nations, that we're not counting a farmer in Uganda.
And that one tribe that still exists on that one island that no one's ever talked to, but we constantly fly drones
Island,
over.
I think.
Yeah. We're not talking about those
0%.
They're still at 0.
Yeah.
So I predicted that 3% number is going to grow to 10% in 2025, a more than 300% increase. Now, I was looking at some numbers of just because there are some studies around what percentage of the population is interacting with AI in general, just to throw some numbers out there. The biggest one I saw was a number of 78.5% of the workforce is leveraging AI today. Now, in diving a little bit into those numbers, it was primarily based on email spam filters. Like, hey, you're benefiting from AI because you use AI spam filters, which, by the way, kind of suck. And maybe that needs to be one of the predictions or areas. I've abandoned email. I'm going to stop going down that tangent. But so 78.5% are using AI if we look at email spam filters.
Google has it right up on the top page now. If you use Google, which is about everybody, you're interacting with AI. And even then, AI of some sort is very much involved in like the results that you see on the page when you do a Google.
There was a Pew Research study that said that around 55% of Americans are leveraging AI in their daily lives. But again, it was in that unconscious sort of area. Like they don't know that they're leveraging AI, but with these, smart suggest predictions and stuff like that, not going in with actual tooling.
It's gotta be so much higher than that, because anybody who's ever used autocorrect on their phone or type the word to like fill in that's a form of AI. If we're not taking the narrower, like it is a generative large language model.
I think you're thinking of if we take a slice of at least semi-affluent and legal age but not too old Americans, the number skyrockets. But if we include all Americans, the number goes down, because it was not locked off to a particular age group. One other number I saw: 75% of business leaders say that they used generative AI in 2024. So that crowd seems to have got that. Hey, I should be using ChatGPT to help me write these business emails, and maybe even do some of my work. Not that I would have ever done that, but they figured it out. But 2025, my prediction is we go from 3% to 10% of the population at large. We're excluding that one little island of the tribe that's never met humanity, only sees the drones overhead. But everyone else, we get up to 10%. There we go.
Okay.
Number two
from ChatGPT first, I suppose.
Okay.
Keep this round robin going in a circle. Widespread integration of AI in healthcare. By 2025, AI will be deeply integrated into both the clinical and operational aspects of healthcare, from predictive diagnostics powered by machine learning, which we know we already have in some sense, to personalized treatment plans tailored to a patient's genetic makeup. AI will play a role in early disease detection, treatment optimization, and even drug discovery. The adoption of AI in healthcare will be facilitated by regulatory bodies ensuring the technology is safe, reliable, and transparent. AI-driven tools for mental health, such as emotion-aware chatbots or therapeutic apps, will also see widespread use. I know there are red teamers, like people who are supposed to try and break and find the bad edges of existing large language models, and we've had some discussion about certain, especially mental health related interactions with large language models. I do think that if there is an awareness, dare I say self-awareness, put into these models, we could more properly intercede at the appropriate times with usage of these. I worked for a now defunct social startup some years ago, which was looking for, among other things, cyberbullying attempts online, and would filter those off to the side, or self-harm discussion where the mascot would pop out and say, hey, do you want to talk to somebody about this? And you never know. And it's, for legal reasons, you can't really follow up on this and say, were you going to do it? But judging from the interactions that had existed, I'm pretty sure this very early system that I'd done helped avoid harm to people and others as well. I think that we're going to see this kind of thing, hopefully, implemented in wide-reaching, your chat GPTs and so on. It doesn't have to be every model everywhere, but where people are going to interact with them, the most people in the fewest places, something where it pops up and says, you're talking about self-harm. Do you want to talk to and just helping filter out certain kinds of interactions in a positive way for people and for society as a whole. I think that there's tremendous possibility there.
Now, on a
let alone
previous
all the healthcare stuff too.
A previous episode, and I know this because I was watching YouTube on my personal account and it recommended me this short, but you talked about how if you went to your primary care physician for your annual checkup and he whips out advanced voice mode on his ChatGPT to ask a question, you'd feel uncomfortable with that interaction. Is that still the case? And do you think that evolves in 2025?
I think it evolves in 2025 in that I don't want my doctor to say, hey, ChatGPT, what do you think about this? What I want is a person who is an expert and highly trained to be more used to interacting with this generative AI world that we are now inhabiting, where it can say, I'm not just going to say what's wrong with them. I'm going to point you to 5 relevant pieces of literature, and having looked at that and his genetics and the viscosity of his saliva, I think this is what's wrong with him, or, whatever it ends up being. And I don't want an AI, a robot, a LLM, or whatever to be my doctor. I want it to help doctors.
Now, there are some areas of medicine where most people would agree AI has surpassed the average doctor. And I'm thinking of oncology as an example in identifying cancer in x-rays or scans.
Sure. I've heard the same with slides for certain kinds of skin cancers, for example.
Yeah. So are we are we as a, I don't know, human population, are we ready to accept that the doctor doesn't know best and we really just need to ask the computer some of these questions? And the doctor's like, you know, I think I agree with the computer, but the computer's better than me. In your example, you asked the question, you ask the question of your primary care physician and he whips out advanced voice modes and, well, let's consult with the expert.
Right. I think that we're going to get to that point. I don't know if it's 25. Maybe it's 25.
I think it's 2025 in some areas.
When you mentioned oncology and I said like skin cancers and so on, any of these interactions with like, what is health? Health is a zillion things that could be going wrong with you or right with you. Yeah. And I think if you look at slides of a skin cancer related thing, 90% of them are basal cell carcinoma, which I don't know what the percentage is, but I do know that that's the most common skin cancer because my dad's a dermatologist. And so if you want to make a highly performing machine learning model, you take a look at a slide and you say, it's basal cell carcinoma. And you're right, 90% of the, well, at least if it was a positive thing, 90% of the time or whatever, you're right. Well, shoot, that's a very high performing model. And then you have this like long tail as you drop off of like, okay, is it a melanoma? Everyone's heard of those. Is it, and now we've completely exhausted my dermatology knowledge. Is it some other third cancer, let alone the 97th most common skin cancer, let alone that thing that there have been 4 cases of ever, and you need a person who really has been like, I study the weird stuff. I know all of the like skin cancers that ain't nobody seen before. And even if you show each of those to a machine learning model, my real question here is, are we at a point where you can have a model that looks at 1 billion basal cell carcinomas and one thing that I can't even think of a weird fake name of a skin cancer, but like if it's seen one of those in 1 million of those, is that not going to pollute the space, the answers enough to the point where you miss all of the weird rare stuff because you, even if you've heard of it, you don't know? So I think people are probably still better at recognizing this is a rare thing instead of, since I've seen this more often, it's surely that instead.
I just want Scarlett Johansson as my primary care physician. That's my one request for 2025.
Oh, I was more thinking House.
If to each his own. All right, what was your?
At least he's a doctor in the show. I don't think Scarlett Johansson's a doctor, at least in the Avengers, right?
Maybe. What's on your list, Daniel?
On my list, number 2.
Number 2.
I actually have the list here. The kind of again a riff off of what ChatGPT said here. My number 2 is sort of the opposite of healthcare. It would be harm do. AI and war.
This is more depressing stuff.
Yeah, it is. We saw in 2024 some wild changes in the war space with everything going on with the Russia quote unquote special operations war.
Is kind of what we're talking about.
So drones and like I didn't hear AI used too much in relation to what's going on in that war, but I do think, having seen a little bit of it, we're going to see a lot more of it in 2025, where we all of a sudden can say this grenade-equipped drone doesn't even need a person anymore to operate it, to fly it over there, which in terms of like trying to avoid enemy munitions or something, every 50 milliseconds of lag back and forth makes all the difference in the world. Mm-hmm. At some point, somebody's taking those particular gloves off, and then war really changes, where we see it's just a bunch of robots going around without even a person hooked up to it. And then does it just become whose military-industrial complex is stronger is what wins wars at that point? Maybe, I guess, or who can hit more vital infrastructure faster. Is that a positive prediction? No. Do I think that we are? And I don't think this is a large language model powered bomb drone, by the way. I think it's AI in the more traditional sense of like a bunch of sensors taking in the data and making whatever prediction of how far to change your nose cone's angle, that sort of thing. I do think that we'll see a lot more AI in war, possibly without people being involved at all in 2025.
Because at least up until this point, we strongly suggest that a human is making the final decision of whether you pull the trigger, you detonate the thing, or you don't. I have some strong suspicions that we do stuff outside of this realm, but what you're suggesting is that potentially, or no, you're suggesting that in 2025, it will become the case. If it hasn't become the case yet, it's going to become the case that there are a percentage of scenarios where we are now accepting that the AI makes the decision when to pull the trigger.
Yep.
And it's a little scary.
It is. Again, not a super positive sort of prediction, but I was trying to think, like, what do I see happening in 2025? That.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, mine is not depressing, so at least I got that.
Kind of balancing it out.
Mine's a little bit out there. You need to think end of 2025. Please don't think, first, it's not Q1, it's not Q2, not Q3, but Q4, the arrival of the holodeck. This is my 2025 number 2 prediction. And you narrow that in just a little bit, generative worlds. And this is on the edge. What is the Sora that comes out right at the end of the year? It is... And that just like the people on the edge, and they're spending $1,000, $2,000 to get in there and experiment with, but it is a compelling virtual world simulation that you can get in, that you can direct, that can form around you and build this world that you can navigate in 3D space. And we already see the beginnings of this technology today. There are a couple companies out there that have actually put out some compelling demos. They're very limited. You can't really play with them. You can sort of, check out like tiny little bits of it. But I think by the end of 2025, it exists. And it's also my belief that this is an important part of our path to AGI. I think the AI being able to simulate the world and create a simulation that is more or less indistinguishable for the real world, is an important part for me in determining, has this, whatever you're going to call it, a super intelligence or general intelligence arrived? And in order for it to arrive, you've talked a lot about the embodiment part. You want to see embodiment. You want to see, you want to be able to interact with the AI in the real world.
Yep. We start virtual.
For me, that's not necessarily a requirement, but I do think that we have to be able to meet the AI, and we either have to be able to meet the AI in our world, that would be embodiment, or their world, and their world would be this simulation that we can get into, and we can exist.
Made the simulation for you.
Correct. We can exist in the same world as them.
I've seen some examples of like, here's an image generator that doesn't just make images; it will also make a 3D model, and I have seen a couple mostly fairly janky demos of like, take an empty space, now fill it with a jungle, and it just makes a whole jungle. I could absolutely see that by end of 2025 there being a fairly snazzy and well put together product that's on the Meta Quest 4 or whatever. Because I'm sure there'll be a new version of that too, and it would just be like, I want to go to Jurassic Park, and then wham, you're all of a sudden in your own. They didn't pre-program it. It wasn't in there before. You've got your full lush jungle. There's dinosaurs walked around. It even made the dinosaur meshes and polygons and models and textures and all that sort of stuff. like, if not on the fly, in the couple of seconds from when you asked it to when it needed it. Or I want to now be in space. No, a different, like, make instead of black space, it's pink and the stars are chartreuse. And maybe that's a bit much visually, but I'm in a spaceship, a different spaceship, bigger one. Yeah. And just click, you can make the world change around you virtually.
Q4 2025, it'll be here.
I think that's very exciting. I like that quite a bit. Right. Are we getting into the number ones now?
Number one.
From ChatGPT, what does it think its top prediction is in the AI space for 2025? AI-powered personal assistants with advanced contextual understanding. By 2025, we'll likely see the emergence of AI-powered personal assistants that go beyond simple task management. These assistants will have deep contextual awareness, allowing them to manage complex workflows, anticipate needs based on prior interactions, and seamlessly integrate across various devices and platforms. These AI assistants will have an improved ability to understand emotions, adapt to user preferences, and even offer proactive advice or make decisions on behalf of users with privacy concerns addressed by better data handling frameworks. Totally agree. Hard agree.
That sounds a lot like what Sam Altman talks about a lot. I wonder if that feeds into that at all, or the inverse is true. Sam. When people ask Sam, "What are you building next? What do you think the future is?" He's just going to ChatGPT, because I feel like he said more or less that verbatim fairly recently and interestingly.
Well, I've seen the promise of this begin to be realized. I've talked about this in the last couple of episodes or so.
Is Claude going to get us there?
Yeah, so Claude Klein, the VS Code integration. I have a website now. I'm going to probably show this off in early 2025 because I'm terribly proud of myself. And by myself, I mostly mean Claude, frankly. But I have a website that would not exist. Straight up wouldn't exist if not for Claude. And not just Claude, Klein, the extension that's put into my programming program, VS Code. If not for that, and its ability to find and read the files that it needs to, be given documentation on the internet, and run commands on the command line, read the output and say, oh, having seen the output, now I know what's going on. Like that ability to not just make code, but to run it, to go to the right place, to read the documentation, to learn more about what it needs. Take that same thing and now give it access to all my emails and my calendar and recordings from the meetings that I've been in and my Discord servers. And all of a sudden it says, well, I just happen to know that you're going to be traveling to Slovakia in July, and I happen to be doing a little bit of Googling around. There's like a crazy good deal for flights right now. It's probably going away really soon. I already booked it, 24 hours. Let's you and I talk. We can always cancel it. No big deal. You want to go? Look at this. This is great flights. And I know you hate taking red eyes, so it leaves early. Like, we'll get to that point. And I think we can get there in 2025. It's so close. I've seen it on the programming side. If you just hook it up to a few more things, I really think that we can finally have an actual assistant.
It's interesting.
You'll have to give it everything, though. That's kind of the problem, is an assistant is only good as the information you give it. And so we'll also see the bad flip side of this is massive privacy concerns of am I giving my whole life to ChatGPT, or is there a locally runnable version of this? That I feel way better about, of I have it that stuff doesn't go out to the internet. All the processing of my information stays on my device. There'll probably be an OpenAI version first and then the local one, but I love the idea of a personal assistant. I think we're there. The technology's there. Someone just needs to wrap it all up together.
It's interesting. I'm thinking back to last year in some of the episodes where we had discussions about leveraging something like ChatGPT to plan a trip. And we talked about, would you really be okay with that? We were not okay with it. The idea that it would go out no. But you feel that we were on the precipice of it this year of being okay with that.
Well, if we can have an AI that has seen, here are the last 100 flights Daniel's taken, and I've established what the patterns are, and I've seen all of the emails about when he needs to be somewhere, and I've looked through his messages, and he was talking about how he doesn't like taking early flights, and he wants to make sure that he's there 2 days in advance because of some little festival that he wants to, whatever all of that stuff is. If we can take all of that context and shove that into the thing, and give it the exact same tools that I was worried about of it booking flights for me. I don't know. It booking flights knowing about me is frankly what makes all the difference in the world, because something that can use use an API to book a flight, that's not my concern. My concern is it wouldn't be the right flight for me.
And that's your number one?
No, that is ChatGPT's number one.
ChatGPT's number one.
What
is your number one?
It's the year of an actually useful physical gadget. I have
how novel!
I have the Plod pin.
That's a little bit questionable.
I like it. I have finally come around to. I solidly like it, and if you have a lot of in-person meetings, I would recommend it. I have a lot of headphones on. It would get one half of the conversation, and I'd rather just have the plug-in to Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever that just records it and does the transcription and knows who the person is on the other end of the line, because it can see what their username is. That is the amount of usefulness that I need right now. If I was doing in-person customer calls or something like that, if I had a bunch of in-person meetings, I think it would be way more useful, and I would recommend it to any of you listening that have a lot of in-person meetings. Maybe not the exact right tool for me. But something in 2025 is, and I don't know if it's a standalone device or it's just part of your phone, but something that is AI powered, that is a physical device that then becomes the indispensable piece of hardware. Now, I realize that sounds a bit of a cop-out because there's Apple Intelligence in the latest iPhones, and they've been shoving all kinds of various smarts into the Android devices as well. And that's true, and I could also just download the ChatGPT app and so on. But I think what I am getting at is there will be a device or like a primary mode of interaction with existing devices of like, turn on AI mode, and then it just is in that mode or something. This would be like the Hey Google kind of approach. Now I have to turn off my phone because it was listening. If you have one of those sort of like ways of interacting with it, and it really is actually useful at recording this conversation, or it's going to book you the flights, or it's going to do whatever thing. I don't know what it is, but in 2025, I think it's not just going to be I'm interacting with a chat window or something built into Microsoft Office or whatever. It's going to be there's a device that is like a part of my life without sitting down and typing at a keyboard.
I'll buy it. It's definitely
a passive way or barely active way of interacting with AI that a lot of people get used to, find value in.
All right. I look forward to maybe my that orange thing that's kind of up there. Will I even forgot what's it called? The pie is rabbit.
Was that the rabbit R one?
Yeah, they just came out with some new features that I need to turn it on for like the 4th time, so that it'll update,
you know what?
so they can turn back off again.
I'll change my prediction ever so slightly. I know what the form factor is. It's a big old robot arm that you can get installed in like your ceiling, that probably around your kitchen, and it'll extend and it can like stir pots for you, and it'll flip to the right page in the cookbook.
There were some very
and then it'll talk
rumors
to you by kind of doing this with its hand. You're going to have to take a look at the TikTok shorts for this, but it's like a sock puppet style hand where when it talks, it opens and closes its hand like this.
There were some very credible rumors that Apple is working on something similar to that. It is an arm with an iPad attached to the end of it that spins around and talks to you.
See?
And that, like, strongly considering. Yeah. All right. Number one for me. So one of the themes of last year in 2024 were boards of directors of companies going to the company leadership and telling them you must have an AI strategy. In pretty much every company, but certainly in the tech area, you must have an AI strategy. So my prediction for 2025, and this is going to be focused in the tech sector, so for the tech companies, is that those board of directors are going to go back to that company leadership and tell them that they need to have a strategy of actively employing AI agents, and that by the end of 2025, the average technology company will have an AI employee on their payroll. Now, this is a continuation of, I guess, ChatGPT suggesting we're going to have these assistants, and there's definitely a muddy line between, again, so wait, if I have a ChatGPT subscription and I ask it questions, like, is that what we're talking about? Right. But it's a step forward from that. It is true agentic interactions. And I'll give a specific example. The company that I'm working with right now, in January, we are hiring Devin as one of the engineers on the team. I have no idea how good or bad it's going to work out, but Devin is an autonomous software engineer. You got to pay him $500 a month and he will join your team. He'll work on tickets that you have. You can assign them tasks, and per the marketing literature, it kind of works like another employee. But I believe that by the end of the year, everyone's going to have, the majority of technology companies will have at least one employee, and the boards of directors are going to be pushing technology companies to be thinking about how are we actually interacting with these agents to the point that we're interacting with them as if they were other employees.
And that's believe this isn't a silent integration in everyone else's workflow. You believe this is I don't even have to talk to them outside of our weekly one-on-ones. It's
that you treat like an employee.
AI employee.
It's an AI employee. Yeah.
I remember we were kind of ragging on the capabilities of Devin right when it came out. Devin being a AI-powered programmer employee sort of thing. Yeah. Why wouldn't it get a lot better in 2025 as everything else is?
Well, and so the boards of directors, which often represent the business and the investors, they're constantly pushing for more efficiency, right, better returns. You talked about we're going to see lots of jobs being lost and stories around that. It aligns with that as well. But they are going to be pushing these companies to have a strategy for how are you replacing employees with this technology. And I think it's getting to the point where we're actually hiring AI employees. Not just buying a program, but hiring AI employees.
Interesting.
There we go. That's
well,
it. You really don't need to. You don't need to listen to another episode this year, or maybe you do, because
at least check in toward the end of Q4 to see in the holodeck. Yeah.
By then we'll have been replaced by we'll be off in the holodeck. There'll be 2 AI agents here talking about what
talk to us. Yeah.
What they think is or not going to be happening, and we'll take it from there. But another episode of They Might Be Self-Aware. 2025, it's here. We're excited. Podcast is going to keep getting better. We've got ideas. It will evolve, and we're going to be here throughout the year, bringing you the insight, the discourse, the news that hopefully you find at least semi-interesting. And
I know how you could tell us.
How could they tell us? How could they let us know?
Well, leave us a comment. Maybe a like. There's some thumbs up arrows depending on what platform you're looking on. Your Spotify's and Apple Music's and podcasts and so on and so forth. We're on YouTube.
Find us on YouTube.
I'm wearing a festive sweater, and you wouldn't have known it unless you were watching us.
It's a little questionable in 2025, but I'm going to let it slip.
The sweater?
Yeah, I feel like the time has passed. It's January now.
It's winter.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year. And you've been listening to
They Might Be Self-Aware.